right, everyone, I think we'll get started. Good evening and welcome to Together Women Rise's national webinar for February. I am Wendy Fradlin and I'm the Communications and Membership Director at Together Women Rise, and I'll be your moderator this evening, but I'll be turning it over shortly to some speakers who are going to tell us about great projects that we're learning about this month. Before we get into our program, I know that some of you may be new to our webinars and to Together Women Rise. So I just want to share a little bit about who we are. We are a community of women and allies who are dedicated to achieving global gender equality. All across the country, we have local chapters who gather together to learn about the challenges and issues facing women and girls around the world. They give to so that we can award grants to projects that help empower women and girls in low-income countries. And we gather to build community so that we have connections with each other and with women and girls all around the world. If you are a new person here tonight, there are many, many different ways that you can get involved in Together Women Rise. Please feel free to come back monthly to these webinars. You'll get to learn about a different issue each month and get to meet some people from all across the country. We also have, you can find or join a chapter. You can start your own chapter. We'll be happy to help you with that. You can join our book club discussions or learn how to be an advocate and raise your own voices for women and girls around the world. We even have travel experiences where you can visit firsthand the important work we're doing together. So just last little note is about Zoom. I know we're all pretty used to this new virtual environment and to Zoom, but a couple of tips. The chat function is a great place to say hi, where you're from. If you're new, we'd love to see that. We would also like you to use the chat for any questions that you might have for our speakers. Because we have quite a large group, we ask you to put your questions in the chat and we will pull them up during the Q&A period. And I would also suggest, because it is a large group and it's great we can all see each other's faces, but sometimes it can be hard to find the speaker. If you do put your view on speaker view, then you'll always have, we've got 4 different speakers tonight, so you'll always have the speaker come up. Those are my only tips. Please keep yourself on mute while the speakers are talking, just so we can minimize the noise. So each month, Together Women Rise features a project that addresses one of the challenges faced by women and girls in low-income countries around the world. These projects are awarded a featured grant of between $35,000 and $50,000. And together, every month, whether it's at this national webinar or in local chapters all across the country, we're learning about this featured project, about the issue and the challenges that women are facing, the country, even the cuisine of the country that we're featuring. So I wanted to just give a little note about a special focus that we have for this first part of 2022. Over the next 2 months, our featured projects, this one tonight and also our project in March, they both focus on the mental health needs of survivors of gender-based violence. They each use a different approach to treatment and recovery. And so it'll be interesting to kind of compare those different approaches in 2 different countries, but they do have that common theme. And gender-based violence is one of the most prevalent issues faced by women and girls around the world. And it can truly have lifelong repercussions for survivors, as I'm sure we'll hear about tonight. The topics we are going to discuss tonight and at our and with our project next month as well. The topics may be difficult for some of us to discuss and to hear about. So I ask that you all please consider your own well-being before engaging in the content and, over the next few months participating in our chapter discussions. So our project that we're learning about tonight, we are Together Women Rise is partnering with Common Threads project. We are funding a trauma treatment project in Nepal. Our featured projects provide us with a brief video. So we're going to take a look at that video first, and then I will introduce you to our wonderful speaker from Common Threads.
At Common Threads Project, we accompany women and girls on their healing journey from sexual violence, war, and displacement. We have developed a unique methodology for this process. In our programs in Ecuador, Nepal, Bosnia, and Eastern Congo, we have witnessed a miraculous capacity for resilience and growth. Even in the most challenging contexts, recovery is possible.
मलाई चाहिँ अब यसमा कमेन्ट थ्रेडमा भन्नुपर्दा चाहिँ एकदमै हुन्छ नि जुन अब भित्र लुकेको पीडाहरूलाई चाहिँ बाहिर निकाल्न सक्यो अनि त्यसपछि मलाई फिल भएको चाहिँ मान्छेमा भएको जुन पीडाहरू हुन्छ नि त्यसलाई चाहिँ धागोको मार्फत पनि निकाल्न सकिन्छ भन्ने चाहिँ मलाई फिल भयो.
Our work is inspired by the ancient tradition of making story cloths that is found in so many different cultures. We know that our deepest human experiences, whether of love, terror, loss, awe, or despair, seem to defy words. So in many contexts throughout history, women have come together to sew their unspeakable stories as a way of being understood. We combine this practice with current trauma therapies to achieve profound and lasting recovery. We work in collaboration with local community organizations. Together, we plant and nurture seeds that can grow over time. Common Threads Project trains local practitioners who adapt the program so that it is culturally resonant and fits their community's needs. They lead the healing circles, and we mentor them as they gain expertise. Deep recovery from sexual and gender-based violence is every survivor's right.
I always believe, trauma often stay on our brain as a picture, so that picture can, the display through the showing needle and thread.
In a Common Thread circle, there is a sense of intimate connection with others. Within the safety of the group, we work where trauma lives, in the body and in visual images. The stitching itself is calming, rhythmic, and meditative, allowing participants to stay in a grounded state while processing such painful experiences. Like trauma work, the story cloth happens at a slow pace. It takes time and patience.
हमें अपना आप ऐसा लगा कि हमारी कोई वैल्यू है, हमें अब जिंदा रहना चाहिए,
हाँ, हम कुछ काबिल हैं, हम कुछ कर सकते हैं। वैसे हमें लग रहा था हमारी इस लाइफ बिल्कुल ख़त्म हो गई है, लेकिन उससे हमें एक हौसला मिला। हम दोबारा अपने आप को हमने ज़िंदा रहने की तरफ जो है वो कि हमारी भी कोई वैल्यू।
All right, so tonight we are going to learn some more about this excellent project and this excellent organization from Rachel Cohen. She is the founder and executive director of Common Threads Project. She specializes in trauma treatment. She's a clinical psychologist who has been in practice for over 25 years. And after decades of working within the limitations of conventional talk therapy, she turned to additional pathways to promote healing. In 2012, she began to develop an integrative intervention for trauma recovery that finds its inspiration in the ancient practice and widespread practice of women sewing story cloths together. This transcultural tradition is consistent with current neurobiological understandings that the impact of traumatic experience lives in realms beyond words. Dr. Cohen has worked with local partners to train clinicians and adapt and implement programs in Ecuador, Bosnia, Nepal, Kenya, and many other countries. Common Threads Project has just begun its work with refugee and immigrant communities in Seattle and New York. Rachel has presented at international conferences, has published articles and book chapters documenting the work of Common Threads Project. She earned her doctorate in clinical psychology from the University of Michigan and a certificate in global mental health from the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma in 2010. Rachel, we are so pleased to have you here tonight and looking forward to hearing more about Common Threads Project. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's really a pleasure to be here. Am I unmuted? Good. Okay. It's quite a pleasure to be here and a great honor to for Common Threads Project to be a featured grantee of Together Women Rise. I'm delighted that all of you have come out and eager to learn more about what we do, and I'm eager to share that with you. I'm going to share my screen and show you some visuals, because the work we do, as you could see, let's see here. The work we do is quite visual, and because of that, I want you to be able to see some of the story cloths that the women in these circles are making, and it will give you more of a feel for the work we do. Okay. So what is this all about story cloths that we have been working with? Something that I sort of stumbled into about 10 years ago, and I discovered the incredible power of this ancient practice. And I really think that we psychologists, we therapists and practitioners today need to learn more and more from ancient cultural practices about how people have managed adversity through the ages. And this is one way that women have dealt with very challenging situations. And we're beginning to see why it works. It's actually supported by what we understand about neurobiology and trauma. And I can tell you a bit more about that later if people are interested when we're doing some questions and answers. I won't go too far there now, but probably some of you do some handwork and think about this. What is it like when you're hand sewing, embroidering, knitting? Yeah. And what if you're doing that with a group together? You feel connected. There's a kind of intimacy that automatically develops in that group. And you're not having to look at each other in the eyes. And this creates a lot of emotional safety, especially for people who struggle with feelings of shame, as many survivors do. So there's a kind of emotional safety that's granted by the sewing itself. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the capacity in making a narrative textile, there's the capacity for self-expression that is not in words, because trauma doesn't live in words. It lives often in images and in the body. And that's where our interventions have to be most effective and have to be channeled. Yeah? There's a deeply self-regulating quality that you've probably experienced if you do handwork, that meditative rhythmic quality that happens with hand sewing actually supports people who are trying to deal with very overwhelming emotions. And the pairing of the sewing and the dealing with these overwhelming emotions allows the women to tolerate a kind of working through that needs to happen for them to recover. And it needs to happen gradually, just like the slow pace of sewing, yeah, and cautiously and with a lot of support. And that's what sewing groups provide. So it's this gorgeous possibility that's so familiar and so unthreatening. And then there is this also this enormous sense of mastery where one can make something beautiful out of a quite horrific experience, and where one can put things out there, the pain can be out there in the story cloth rather than just within me. And that way other people can understand what it is I've experienced and what I'm going through, and they can offer support and they can bear witness to what has happened. And they can break the silence, those who are making these story cloths, the silence that is so often imposed on survivors of sexual violence. Yeah. I want to encourage you, if you have a chance to go to our website, you can click on an exhibit that's online of story cloths that are made in our circles all around the world. And they're extraordinary to see. And you will have a chance to bear witness and even to communicate with the women who have made these story cloths by leaving them messages of encouragement. I want to show you some story cloths now, just a few, as our time is short. You saw a brief photo of this in the video that you watched. And one of the things I love about this story cloth, made by an Afghan refugee in Nepal several years ago. And what I love about this is that she and others, many others who are making story cloths, use metaphor as a way to express themselves. And this can be so much easier to bear than direct images of what happened to them. I mean, this is a difficult image in and of itself, but it's a metaphor. And she says of this, her family was persecuted by the Taliban, and they escaped and they fled to Nepal. She says, these birds are afraid of the hunter. They have flown and left their homes to an undetermined site. She didn't know where she was headed when she fled. They are hungry and thirsty. They really need food. We are like these birds. We're worried about our future. Show you another story cloth. This is made by Santi, a woman in one of our circles who had experienced child sexual abuse and had never told anyone about it before. And this is many years later. She finds a safe place in which to do that. She had carried this with shame and self-blame for decades. This is her family's farm at harvest time, when the extended family would arrive annually to help with the harvest. And each year when she was a child, a visiting relative abused her and threatened her if she would ever tell anyone. So she remained silent about this until she came to Sajadago, that's the Nepali name for common threats. And there she was able to work through the shame, the stigma, and the very deep-seated guilt she felt about this. And she found that she wasn't alone, and she got a lot of support from the other women in her circle. This is a lovely one. made recently by a teen in one of our adolescent circles. Nina, she says, I'm grateful that I had a chance to participate in Sajadago. I'm grateful because I became more confident and able to make decisions for my future life. And this is what she's describing in her story cloth. In order to get my citizenship card when I was 16, I had to return to my birthplace where I had not been since being trafficked from there as a child. Only because of participating in the program could I go back to this village by myself, because my confidence and inner strength had become very strong and powerful. So I could deal with all the processes, and I finally got a citizenship card after 2 weeks. Although many flashbacks and triggers came into my mind and I felt very scared, but I was able to cope with all the situations. And I remember the grounding exercises that we learned. I was aware of the beautiful nature around me, taking in fresh air and being aware of where I was in the moment. I learned these exercises in Sajadago. I was able to understand my problems and situations better and realize that it wasn't my fault. And why should I be afraid? When this life is mine, I should decide myself. I want you to meet one of our heroes. This is Jamuna Shrestha. I call her guru, that means teacher. I started out training her, and now she's my guru. I learned so much from her, and she does this beautiful, beautiful work with the girls and women in Nepal. She is the head of our program there and the main facilitator. And she now, she trained in our first cohort in Nepal in 2014, and now she trains and supervises others. And the whole program in Nepal is based, really all of our programs, based on principles of empowerment. So the facilitators, like Jamuna, have been through this process of empowerment where now she's in charge and she's teaching others. And the participants as well have become, some of them, co-facilitators of subsequent groups who help Jamuna and other facilitators with running the groups. And Sajadago is now poised, with help from Together Women Rise this year, is going to become its own independent Nepali organization. And this is what we do. We plant seeds together, and the seeds grow and bear fruit and become part of the communities where we're working. And this is the story of Nepal, and why we're so excited for the support from Together Women Rise that is going to really make this dream come true. Yeah. Let me show you one last slide, because people are, of course, curious what in the world is happening with all of this during COVID. And actually, things in our Nepal project have been quite lively during COVID. I show you a few photos here. You see one of a Zoom call, and those are our facilitators actually meeting in their own Sajadago support circle. During COVID, they started their own circle for each other to support one another through these incredibly difficult times, and they continue that. And they run other groups that have been meeting together on Zoom as well. But they say that this circle has become, for them, it's self-guided, and they do all of the practices, the games, the sewing, the artwork, and so on and so forth that they do in their groups with participants. But they said that this has been a lifeline for them during COVID. COVID has hit extremely hard in Nepal. Many of them have lost family members, neighbors, friends. They themselves have been very sick. In fact, this week, several of our facilitators are again, have been struck with Omicron and are recovering, and we send them our prayers and wishes over the miles. And they continue the work no matter what. It's an incredibly dedicated bunch. I'm in awe. And here you see another group below them wearing masks. And most of the time when there have been circles, they've been on and off. When things get bad, the circles go remote or pause, but they're doing the work and trying to be as safe as they can about it. And then you see another photo here. The one on your left is a circle that's meeting outdoors. These are the facilitators once again, having their circle of support. So that helps to give you just a little flavor of what we're doing. And I certainly welcome your questions, your thoughts, your comments as we take a little bit more time together on this.
We've got a few questions already, and I encourage people to put their questions in the chat. You probably didn't notice some of the comments in the chat, Rachel, but there is a whole group of participants who are doing their knitting while they're watching this Zoom and listening to you speak. And I'm just thinking how neat it would be if we had if there was a Together Women Rise group that was doing their quilting or their knitting or their sewing, took a picture, and you could share it with the women in Nepal to see how, I mean, women are, there is some commonality around the world.
Absolutely.
And
it's a gorgeous way of coping.
And the ladies who were saying that they were knitting while they were watching, they all said, maybe we should all get together. And someone even said that they've been having their knitting circle over Zoom. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. I'm delighted.
So yes, we have some questions. The first question is, how do you find the participants for your program? Do they get referred by local organizations or agencies, or how do they come to you?
Sure, thank you. Yes, I mean, this is one of the many reasons we always partner very closely with local organizations on the ground. So they, mostly what we focus on is capacity building. So we do training, mentoring, supervising of the local clinicians. They bring in from their agencies or that they often work in either a mental health agency, a women's organization, in our current circles in Nepal, and the ones that will be getting a lot of attention over the next year are girls who have been trafficked and rescued from trafficking situations. And those girls are often rescued by and then helped to be cared for and get education, housing, and so forth from a couple of organizations in Kathmandu who provide services. And we have partnered with them to provide the psychological recovery, the mental health services that are needed for these girls. So our circles actually meet in the shelters where the girls live. They have a COVID bubble together. So that's one of the ways they've been able to meet together even during these times. And we have worked with refugee organizations also in Nepal and other community organizations that then refer for these groups, these circles. Mm-hmm.
So as you say, you're doing you're doing the training and capacity building so that these trainers can go into the shelters and do the work. Can you describe a little bit more about the training that you provide for the facilitators?
Sure. That's my favorite part. And what they do is experience the full intervention for themselves. And of course, many of the women in the context where we work are themselves survivors of trauma. So they may actually use this for their own growth and healing. And they move through the training. It is both a training in it's very intensive. It's 40 to 80 hours of intensive training up front before they do the groups. They make story cloths. They learn sewing. They do artwork and art therapy and somatic work and breathing and muscle relaxation, the whole gamut, and play a lot of games. They become a very tight group during the training as well because of the intimacy of these circles. And so we train 10 or 15 therapists at a time, and it mimics what they're going to be doing with the groups. And then we follow them throughout the whole intervention, providing weekly supervision, mentoring, and so on as they grow into this and make it really their own, adapt it for their own communities.
Right. Where exactly, someone was asking, where exactly in Nepal are you training people?
Our current
Yes,
group is
Kathmandu, or are you in some
our
other?
current group is in Kathmandu.
Okay,
When we began in 2014, we were in refugee camps
okay,
in Japa, in the Japa region, different part of Nepal, and those camps have gradually. We also were in Kathmandu at that time. We were in both places, and those camps have reduced their numbers and resettled people over time. So we're no longer working in the camps, but in Kathmandu Valley.
that's great. And tell us a little bit about the process that the women go through to make these story cloths. Do they do a small little prototype first and then make the larger story cloths, or do they just dive right into it?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that because it's quite an interesting process. They practice stitches first before they make story cloths. They do a lot of other things with sewing that are sort of safer and emotionally safer and a little bit gentler to work with. So they learn stitches. They sew their names onto a small cloth. And they talk with each other in small groups about the origins of their names and what that means to them. And that's part of a warming up to one another. And then they also do something called slow stitch, which is a meditative exercise of just very, very plain stitching abstractly, so they don't have to tell a story of any kind. And then when it comes time, when they learn enough self-regulation skills and how to manage strong emotions, they're ready to begin a sketch of what will become their story cloth. And we present a series of prompts for them that are quite open-ended. And they go like this. This is a moment I will never forget, which could be positive or traumatic, we don't know. This is what I cannot speak, or what I cannot say. This is what I need you to know. This is what the cloth wants to say, not me. I don't have to own it. Yeah? And this is how I managed to survive. So they can pick any of these that's moves them or that inspires them in some way, and they begin to sketch something on paper. And then eventually, again, gradually, they begin to take these images and put them onto cloth. So they work with lots of scraps from different places and maybe some materials that have a personal importance to them, some fabric, and they begin to build a background. And then they also make little dolls that can be the figures in the story cloths, or they can embroider figures. And it's a long process.
How long do you think they work on them? How long does it?
Well, the first phase of the work is about 3 months, and they meet every week for 3 or 4 hours. And they make an individual story cloth within that first 3-month period. And then in the second 3 months, they make collective story cloths on common themes and different prompts. They make group story cloths.
Yeah.
And those focus more on the future and on sense of hope and sort of moving out of the realm of trauma into a different mode of being to reclaim a sense of future and of hope.
Right. And then are these story cloths displayed or shared with others in any way?
So it's been interesting because some of the women have really asked to share these. They want to share their stories. It is something that gets discussed toward the end of the intervention. These story cloths really are for the process, not the product, and they're for them. But we have also done exhibitions of work. They do them. This first happened in our initial project in Ecuador. The women wanted to create an exhibition, which wound up going to the UN in Geneva, to the Palais. It went, and this was some years back, but they wanted their stories told. And this was sort of the next phase of healing. They moved from a sense of shame and hiding, really, and secrecy to wanting the world to know what has happened to them, and some of them become quite outspoken about women's rights by the end and become advocates, working against gender-based violence, trying to help others not have to experience what they went through. So there's a real process of transformation that occurs that's amazing to see. I went back visiting our site in Democratic Republic of Congo, and when two of the women came to me with a story cloth they had made together, and they said, a whole pile of story cloths, please take these with you. Take them with you and show the world what is happening to us here. People need to know. So they really went from silence to raising their voices through the story cloths.
That is so inspiring. And I would encourage you, I pulled up your website, Rachel, and clicked on that exhibition that you mentioned. It's incredible, and it is awesome how you've used the technology to make you feel like you're right in an exhibition. And please check that out. The link is in the chat. We are going to have to wrap out. I'm going to ask one further question tell us just a little bit about the work that you're doing now here in the US, in Seattle and New York, with refugees.
Thank you. Well, of course, we don't have to go across the world to find women who need an opportunity to recover, right? And I live in Brooklyn, so right here in New York. We are partnering with the Program for Survivors of Torture, which is an organization at Bellevue Hospital that has been serving survivors of torture for more than 25 years, does extraordinary work. And we have trained a cohort of therapists who will be running Common Thread circles at Bellevue with survivors of torture, who are refugees from all around the world, who have survived severe brutality and need all kinds of tools for recovery. So we're very excited about that project. And we're also working with doctoral students at City University who are learning this methodology, and will be providing services through healing circles in the community where City is in Harlem, with refugee populations, as well as the neighboring community in the surrounding of City College. And in Seattle, we are working with 4 refugee organizations that are run by refugees and provide services to, it's a big refugee community in Seattle. And so we're working with these organizations, training their staff who will be running the circles in Seattle. And both exciting and emerging projects. Thanks for asking about that.
Well, that's just incredible that you're bringing all of that to the United States, all the learnings that you have from around the world. I wish we had more time. If you are able to stay on and scroll through the chat a little and answer some of these other questions that people have.
I'll give it a try. Sure, of course.
I would love that. I just want to say, as we started off our evening, the subject matter that we are addressing over the next few months is very difficult to talk about, but it's very inspiring to hear how you have turned that into hope and transformation. And in fact, I think that all of us, I'm sure, felt very inspired by the work that's being done, and very hopeful about the support that you're giving, and we're happy to be part of your project. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you to you, Wendy, and to Together Women Rise for making so much possible for so many women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, well, it's hard to believe, but we have another very, very exciting project to talk to you about. This is a little bit of a different grant than our featured grant. It is one of our impact partnerships, similar to what we've done in the past for the Peace Corps and UNICEF. Well, now we are doing a couple of impact partnerships we announced late last year with collectives. So networks of organization that have a common or a shared focus area. And Together Women Rise believes that we can make an even greater impact by working with these collectives like the one that we're going to learn about tonight. So as I say, we made a $50,000 impact partnership grant to the Colectivo, which is a network of organizations with a focus on the empowerment and dignity of women and girls in Guatemala. The Colectivo includes several of RISE's past grantees. Not only are they doing great work, but we already knew many of the partners in that Maya, or some of you may recall Starfish, and I'm sorry, Travis, but just as sometimes, as I'm sure there will be times when we'll still always say Dining for Women,
Of
we
course.
do say Starfish, but they're known as Maya now. Wings, and also Women's Justice Initiative. So 3 of our grantees are part of the Colectivo. And tonight we have representatives from Maya and from Wings. First, we have Travis Ning, who is the executive director of Maya. His role is to support Maya's team, which is 90% Indigenous, to find the innovation and support necessary to continue Maya's mission to unlock the potential of young girls. And they are doing an incredible job with that. Travis is originally from Colorado and is a former Peace Corps volunteer from Guatemala. Did you do your Peace Corps work in Guatemala?
No, I did not. I was in Paraguay.
Okay, where were you in the Peace Corps?
Paraguay and East Timor, of all places.
All right. So he lives in Antigua, Guatemala with his family. And joining Travis from Maya is Brenda Saloa. Brenda, forgive me if I messed up.
That's correct. It's Brenda Salo. That's correct.
I don't have your lovely accent. I wish I did. So Brenda is 27 years old and an Indigenous woman from Guatemala. She has a degree in education and several years experience working on literacy and education projects to improve the skills of young people in Guatemala. She is the coordinator of communications at Maya. She's also a member of the very first generation of the Colectivo. She loves her job because it allows her to work with Maya students who are called Girl Pioneers. Our RISE members likely remember learning all about Girl Pioneers. And her goal is to help them amplify their voices and experiences as empowered young women. And last but not least, we have Eleanor Unsworth. Eleanor has been the program director for about 5 years at Wings. Eleanor moved into the executive director role just at the end of 2021. Congratulations, Eleanor, on your new position. She has nearly 15 years of experience working in reproductive health in Guatemala and the US. She graduated from Tufts University with a degree in community health and women's studies and holds a master's in nonprofit management from Northeastern University. Welcome, Travis, Brenda, and Eleanor, and they have assured me they have all figured out who's going to speak when, and we're just going to enjoy all of their different perspectives hearing about the Colectivo.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm going to kick us off. I want to just check in before I get us started. Do you need us to adjust our time at all?
No, you're fine.
Okay, wonderful.
You have your 10 minutes to speak. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I just want to give you all a little bit of an introduction of who makes up the Colectivo, and then Travis is going to talk us through a bit about how we came together, and Brenda is going to share her perspective as a participant in the impact so far of the programming. So as Wendy mentioned, we're a network of like-minded organizations, all dedicated to a common population here in Guatemala, rural Indigenous women primarily. My organization, Wings Guatemala, is dedicated to providing quality reproductive health education and services to underserved, primarily rural Guatemalan individuals. We take a holistic approach to reproductive health, making sure that there are community voices at the forefront of our program design and working to tackle the diverse barriers that exist in exercising sexual and reproductive rights across Guatemala. Maya Impact School, as many of you may know them quite well, They're the first female Indigenous-led secondary school in Central America that offers a holistic education focused equally on academics, culture, and identity, socio-emotional development, and family engagement. It's a really incredible project to get to partner with. We also within the Colectivo have an organization perhaps a little less familiar to some of you called Wukukawak or Maya Health Alliance. This is an organization that since 2007 has been led by Indigenous healthcare workers to bring together medicine, culture, and language to overcome barriers to health and well-being, again, in rural communities across Guatemala. They are led by Indigenous Mayan healthcare workers working at a very community level, often providing home-based healthcare. And they provide quality healthcare to over 20,000 patients a year. They have a particular focus on chronic disease, but also have programs focused on child health, maternal health, primary care, and women's health. And then the fourth organization in the Colectivo, which I believe is known to many of you, is Women's Justice Initiative. They are dedicated to combating gender inequality and ending violence against Indigenous girls and women in rural communities across Guatemala. They improve the lives of Guatemalan women and girls through education and access to legal services and gender-based violence prevention. I frequently take my hat off to Women's Justice Initiative because I think as we got to hear from the first speaker, those who dedicate themselves to working on violence response and violence prevention have a special place in all of our hearts. This project leverages the collective creativity and experience of our four organizations to develop a leadership pathway for the powerful women on all of our teams, with the goal that women from the communities that we serve will acquire the skills and confidence that they need to step into leadership positions, not just within the organizations, but in external arenas as well within Guatemala, and we hope internationally. So I'll let Travis tell you a little bit more about the history and then hand it off to Brenda. Travis?
Thanks, Eleanor, and thanks everyone for being here. It's exciting to connect again with this community with its new name. And I want to just share a little bit about how this all came together. I think especially for those of you who have been in these circles for years, there's always this question of, or this desire to collaborate more. So it's really exciting for Together Women Rise to really be fostering and catalyzing this. I remember a few years back when a delegation from Together Women Rise came to Maya and asked that very question, like, why isn't it that you guys aren't talking to each other more? Like, it seems like you're all doing a lot of different things together, but you're like bumping into each other. And just to be perfectly honest, the problem with that makes that so difficult is it's just finding the time. I think it's just a really difficult thing to stretch out when you don't have the budget or the time. And even between really similar organizations like the four that Eleanor just mentioned, it can be really, really difficult. It's something you want to do, but is it something you have to do? And I think that's what's made it so challenging. But a few years ago, the four organizations in this group received a challenge grant. And it was, the challenge was, if you can figure out a way to work together, this foundation was going to fund it. And none of us had ever really heard anything like that. We all knew each other. We all really respected each other. But we never really had this moment, like a time-bound moment to really engage and figure something out. So it was really fascinating to see how this actually really tiny grant could catalyze these really rich conversations that made us make time for this conversation. So we did field visits. We really just got, and as Eleanor expressed, like really deep respect for each other's lenses. And I think there's a lot of value in understanding why you really see Guatemala's challenges through a different lens, through reproductive health, which I totally believe is a fundamental lens for this now, especially having seen what Wings does, for example. And so that's how it was born. We started off really slowly. We did a few community assessments, and then COVID hit. And that really, again, generated a call to action for us as organizations working in the communities that often don't speak Spanish. it really fell upon us to be able to communicate all the information around COVID-19 and how it could be affected. There was really a ton of bad information coming out, or it wasn't in the local dialect. So that was really something that got us much more engaged, even more so. And through this and through the chaos of continuing to navigate this pandemic together, we've just grown really, really close and forging all kinds of synergies at different levels. So we started thinking about some of the common challenges we all face. And one of these huge elephants in the room is how can we better live into this ethos that we all share? We all say we're led and run by these Indigenous staff, but Eleanor's on this call, look at me, I'm not a Mayan girl. And there's something fundamentally wrong with that. But how do you guys have heard this 1,000 times, like working yourself out of a job. It doesn't just happen overnight. And a lot of people keep saying that decade after decade. So how do you deliberately design a situation where that's actually possible? So we collectively as foreigners, I need to figure this out. And so this is incredibly challenging. There's a reason why it doesn't happen very often. And especially given the really deep cultural and technical obstacles that come with this goal. And we identified 3. The first that really is a barrier to this is English. Like it or not, English is often a necessary skill to access essential partnerships and particularly fundraising. The second part was it really related to more nuanced leadership skills, not that are like program design or program management, forging partnerships, and even storytelling to a crowd like yours. And the third part is around social capital. And we talked about that earlier in the presentation. I thought that was really eloquent of just describing how you need to have the social capital, these spaces that are safe, where you can really rebound and evolve in terms of your own personal and collective resilience. And so in 2021, we designed and launched a program. It's a multicultural leadership program to create new pathways for these high potential staff in all 4 organizations to ascend into positions of leadership within or beyond our organization. So we have 16, we have 4 from each organization that have joined this pathway together. They've been at it for over a year now, so we're entering our 2nd year. And one of them is named Brenda Salo, and she's here on the call tonight. And she will share her experience with you now. Go ahead, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Travis. Good evening, everyone. I am so very excited to participate in this event. I am Brenda. I am an Indigenous woman from Sonora, Guatemala. I work at Maya. I am also a member of the very first generation of the Colectivo in Guatemala. It's an honor for me to share with you about this process and my experience in the Colectivo. It inspires me to see that 16 leaders are being formed. And we are learning the skills we need to accompany the members of or them in different organizations. We started this training in 2021 that Travis mentioned. We have been learning a lot about different topics, techniques, and strategies. It's very important for us to be a good leader in Guatemala. We have this training weekly with different people in Guatemala too. Sometime I want to share with you is that we are learning a 3rd language. In my case, my first language is Cachiquel. I speak in Spanish and I am learning English. This is to support ourselves and to keep growing. It's a pleasure to use this language today to communicate with you my experience and the experience the other co-worker and friends too, because it's a community for me, this Colectivo. I am very happy too and pleasure for this experience. Because I am preparing to support other women in Guatemala is very important for me. This allows me to empower myself and show that women can take different positions in different organizations too. I feel fulfilled and support to achieve our goal, that is to help women raise their voices. Begin part of this collective community is truly honor for me. Lastly, I want to finish my speech by saying thank you, and Matiosh is in Cachiquel. Thank you. if we have a question for me or for Travis or for Eleanor, it's an honor for me. Say more my experience or topics or more anything or so. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda and Travis and Eleanor. They would love to take any of your questions. I know everybody's been busy listening, so if you want to put some questions in the chat now. I must say, Brenda, it is so awesome to see your bright smiling face, and you did a beautiful job and your English is wonderful. Tell me what your favorite thing was about the training that you received from the Colectivo.
Thank you so much, Wendy. For me, my favorite time or things is share with the other women. For example, I have co-worker for Alas Guatemala or Wings or Wukuka Walk is very important for me, and is important the other co-workers to share a role in different organizations, because the Colectivo is necessary support and help each or together is very important. Share different topics, different techniques is helps for them.
How long is the training that each of the leaders have to take?
Right now, we have it designed as a 2-year program, so we're about halfway through. The first part was this, it's really started on English, and now we're kind of folding in this extra part, which is the more technical components of it. And then the third layer, which is really where Together Women Rise is going to come in strong, is in this social capital piece. So acknowledging that as a woman leader of a social change movement here in Guatemala, that's a lifetime of headwind for sure. And to not have to do that alone. These are all 16 women that have really dedicated their lives to this. And the worst would be that they would be doing it alone. And now we've, as Brenda just mentioned, having them form this collective together, and whether that's with these 4 organizations or in other areas as they flourish in their professional lives, to just have this resource to go back to.
So do the 4 women in each of the organizations, do they continue to work in their own organization, whether it's Maya or Wings or whatever, and then come together for the trainings outside of that, I guess? It's
definitely the most challenging part, is that they don't have a lot of time. They're all full-time. A lot of them are moms, and a lot of them are in university on weekends. So it's definitely the biggest challenge of the Colectivo is not interest, it's just time. And so they're in pods in English every day. In the mornings, usually at some ridiculous hour of the day. I'm assuming Brenda started her morning at like something like 4:30 or 5 because she had English class before work. And then we have every other week there are sessions that Eleanor has been leading these sessions on very specific techniques for the last few months. And then one of the other executive directors will fold in and lead the next sessions. And then the third layer we haven't layered on yet, which is that social capital, is probably the most important and perhaps the most difficult, because it's not technical, and we've already layered these other pieces. So finding the time for that is really, really difficult. So that'll be more of a retreat-based program, we think, not an online thing, but more of a get all these 16 women together, get them off-site, and give them that committed, dedicated time to building that network.
Right. Well, Brenda, someone did ask if you could describe what a typical day is like for you. Travis already mentioned that you might have started at 4:30 this morning. Tell us a little bit more about what goes on in your day.
It's interesting because I wake up very easy because every day I receive the English class, because in the Colectivo it's necessary to speak in English for share the other people. For example, today I need translate, speak with you, talk about my experience or other topics, for example. That's why in the morning I receive English class, and I start work with my coworker at Maya, because I work at Maya. During day, I work in different space. For example, now I am coordinator in communication. That's why I write the story, the Girl Pioneers. I help too, because it's necessary for me amplify her voices. That's why I help the Girl Pioneers, the write stories. I meet with my coworker, for example, Travis, or other coworker, for example, share about or work. Is necessary yes, work together. And I finish my work 5 o'clock. Then I go to at home. For me, it's very important to learn a lot, because, for example, at Maya, yes, at Maya, the Girl Pioneers learn a lot the book. That's why it's necessary to help them. In the night, my hobby is watch a movie, and it's necessary to improve my English. That's why I watch a movie, for example, in English, because I help me the everyday receive English class. And I like share with my family my experience, for example, during day, because my family, they don't have more time. That's why every night I share a lot of the experience or a different activity did during the day.
I bet your family is really proud of you. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. We could have talked for an hour about the Colectivo and an hour about Common Threads, and everyone would have loved that. But I want to say thank you so much. And Travis and Eleanor and Brenda, I think we'd love to have you come back again, and when you can tell us more about how you're developing women leaders in Guatemala further, and how things are going. We would love to stay in touch and have you join us again. It's been wonderful. We do try to keep it as close to 9 o'clock as we can. I do want to remind everyone, now you had the wonderful pleasure of seeing all these presentations live, but if you know of anyone else who would enjoy listening to it, or you want to show it at your chapter meeting, or share it with your members, we do record all of these webinars. We post them on our website. Give us a day to get it up there, but if you go to join us, upcoming events, right at the top of the upcoming events listing is a link for the recordings of past grantees. And someone did ask, I don't know if Rachel's still on, but someone did ask Rachel about sharing her PowerPoint. I will follow up on that with Rachel so that you could use that in your chapter meetings. Of course, we can't support wonderful projects like the Colectivo and Common Threads without all of your support. We depend on your donations as well as your active participation in our learning and our engagement together. Please go on our website, togetherwomenrise.org. You can make a single donation or set up a monthly gift if you'd like to support us every month of the year. Our special annual International Women's Day event is coming up. Every year we have a special webinar, and this year our theme is going to be very appropriate because the title of it is Together Women Rise Again, Recovering from COVID Setbacks. And we know that COVID has been devastating for women and girls around the world, particularly those in low-income countries. It's affected every part of their lives, from their education, their healthcare, employment opportunities, their safety. So we will be delving into that. We've got some excellent speakers, and there's more information on our website. Don't forget about our monthly advocacy webinars. That next one is Tuesday, February 15th. Those take place at 8:30 Eastern. We'll meet again here on March the 3rd to learn about our March featured project, the Center for Victims of Torture. And our next, well, I have to tell you, I got some great news today. Our next two book club events will both have the authors attending. The first is March 29th, 8 p.m. The book is Breath, Eyes, Memory by Edwidge Dandakat, and the author will be joining us and presenting. After that, June 8th, we have a fairly recent book, The Girl with the Louding Voice. And I just learned today that the author, Abby Daré, will be joining us. That's going to be a kind of a lunchtime event because she lives in the UK, the author, but I'm sure many of you have heard of her book recently. It has won some awards, and we're thrilled that she'll be able to join us. Check out all of our upcoming events on our website. And also check out more information about Common Threads and the Collectivo. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our speakers. We so appreciate you sharing your stories with us, and are very happy to be part of your work. So thank you, everyone, and good night.